Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved homes and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the head rescue land. Praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust, and the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Amen, amen. You know that first verse that they sung is actually the last verse of the National Anthem. We often sing the first one, and not that last one, which I really like that last one almost better than the first one. And I really want to tell the story of the Star-Spangled Banner, but, well, it is at the beginning of the service. All right, let's go ahead and do it real quick. All right, and then I'll just have to cut something else out as we go. You should remember the Star-Spangled Banner was actually not written during the War of Independence. A lot of people think that it was. It was actually written during the War of 1812. Right. During the War of Independence, the British actually had a bunch of other things going on in the world, and they couldn't throw everything against us. But they took care of their other business, and then it was only again about 25, 40 years later, they said, okay, we got everything done, now let's go reconquer the colonies. And they took over Washington, D.C. Congress had to flee to Philadelphia, and they were licking us everywhere, all over everything. And then the President of the United States said, we need to have a day of prayer and fasting. Things started to change. Well, we had a bunch of prisoners that had been captured by the British, and we had a bunch of their prisoners. And so we decided we would like to try to do a prisoner exchange. So we said, well, we'll send somebody out to negotiate. So we hired this guy who was a lawyer by the name of Francis Scott Key. So he rides out to where the British fleet was out there in the bay, and he negotiated with the admiral, says, hey, we'd like to do a one-for-one swap. And the British admiral said, all right, we will do that. We will do it at dawn the next day. He says, great, well, can I go below decks and tell the prisoners that they'll be free tomorrow? And the admiral said, okay, you can go do that. So he goes downstairs to and if you had ever read anything about the prison ships back in this point of history, they were just atrocious things. Men chained up down there for weeks, sometimes to a guy who had died days before, and they just didn't even bother to take him out. Horrible conditions. Francis Scott Key goes down there and says, men, I've negotiated for your release tomorrow morning. I'll come for you, and you can go back home, and your fight is done. Amen. And then they said that he was asked a very odd question. That question was, can we go back and fight again? And he thought, now, gentlemen, you've paid the price. You've done your part. Go home to your families. And they said, no. See, if America falls, then everything's going to fall. Our family, everything.
Right.
And he said, well, there's nothing in my deal. It says you can't go back and fight again.
Amen.
So yeah, you can go. I'll get you in the morning. So he goes back up on the deck, and he noticed the British admiral's commanding admiral's attitude had changed. And he started giving him a hard time. He says, now, wait a minute. You're not thinking about going back on this deal, are you? I thought you were an officer and a gentleman. He says, no, Francis Scott Key, I'll go ahead and we'll do the deal tomorrow morning. I'll release the Americans, but it won't matter because by tomorrow morning there won't be any more America. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, you see what's coming over the horizon there? And Francis Scott Key looked, and it looked like a bunch of little puffy clouds. Trouble was, it wasn't little puffy clouds. It was the sails of the British Armada. Scores and scores of ships. Each one of those ships having scores and scores of cannons and hundreds, if not thousands, of troops. And it says, we're going to go up and down the coast of here in the United States, where you have all your major cities, and we are going to use this armada, and we are going to destroy every single thing that is in the coast of the United States. And when we're done, there will be no more America. In fact, we're going to start right there at the fort you just came over for there in the bay, Fort McHenry. We're going to destroy it. Well, Francis Scott Key said, listen, I just came from the fort. That's basically a supply depot. There's just some supplies, and mostly women and children. Has very little military strategic value. And the admiral said, now, I'm not a brute, a terrible man. And I have sent messengers over to there saying, we know you're mostly a supply depot with women and children. So if you will simply lower that stars and stripes, and that will let us know you have surrendered once again under the authority of the British king. All you got to do is lower that flag. And they got to do it by the close of sunset. Well, as he looked over at the day's fading light, if you know the story of the song of the Star-Spangled Banner, and you know what? And it says the flag was still there. They didn't lower it. He gave them a chance. So, after the day's light was gone, the British admiral gave the command, and scores of cannons from scores of ships started going boom, 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 and pounding Fort McHenry. This is the world superpower, and they are all trained, all of their guns on that one little spot, specifically the spot where that flag was, and they pounded that. Now, the men down below decks, they're calling up to Francis Scott Key. They're like, can you tell us what's going on? He's like, I don't know. It's dark. There's all the cannon smoke. I said, but then he said there would be a rocket's red glare, and it would let him see the flag was there. Then there would be a bomb bursting in air. He's like, no, I can still see it. It's up. And then after a while, boom, he's like, no, the flag is down. They got it, the flag is down. But in the next rocket, it would be back up again. And over that night, it was down, it was up, it was down, it was up. And they say in the wee hours of the night, the British admiral calls over Francis Scott Key. And he's like, what's wrong with you stupid Americans? My gunners tell me we've hit that stinking flag 12 times tonight, and they keep putting it back up.
Amen.
And the British admiral was correct. These were the finest gunners and marksmen in the world at that time. And when the sun dawn rose on the next day, Francis Scott Key looked to see if our flag was still there. And it was there. Burnt, blood-soaked, holes in it, ripped up, and standing at an odd angle. Francis Scott Key gets in one of those little dinghy boats, and he rows over to see if anybody survived the night. And the British were correct. They had hit that flag and knocked it down to say, we've conquered this. However, the men and women and children who were all hiding as the shells were coming in knew if they take us out, then they're going to go to the next place, and they're going to wipe out a whole city.
Right. And
on. We got to keep this flag up through the night. So one of the men left his family, and he went down and grabbed that flagpole, and he picked it back up, knowing the entire might of the world's superpower is trained on my spot. And he fell. And so the next man would run out.
That's right.
And the next man would run out. By the time Francis Scott Key got there was a teenage boy, because he was the only man left, surrounded by his father and his uncles and his brothers and his neighbors. And the flag was still there. So the next time somebody takes a knee, jerk a knot in their tail.
Amen.
Too great a price was paid.
That's right.
For us to let that old banner slip.
Amen.
That's not even in my sermon, but I'm Lee Watson. I approve that.
Amen.
Amen.